Picture this. A 72-year-old woman walks onto America's biggest talent show stage. The audience starts laughing before she even opens her mouth. The judges roll their eyes. Someone in the crowd shouts, "This is embarrassing." But what happens next will give you chills and restore your faith in the power of dreams. I'm about to tell you the most incredible true story that broke the internet and made grown men cry. This is the story of Eleanor Patterson, and I guarantee you've never heard anything like it. It was a cold February evening in Los Angeles, 2024. The Golden Star Talent Show was filming its season finale at the Microsoft Theater. 20 million viewers would eventually watch this episode, but nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold. Eleanor Patterson stood backstage, her weather hands gripping a crumpled piece of paper. She wore a simple floral dress from Walmart and shoes that had seen better decades. Her silver hair was tied back with a rubber band, and her thick glasses reflected the bright stage lights bleeding through the curtains. The backstage coordinator, Jessica Martinez, looked at her clipboard and frowned. Eleanor Patterson, age 72, unemployed, from Cleveland, Ohio. She glanced up at Eleanor with barely concealed annoyance. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right place? The Senior Center Talent Show is across town." Eleanor's voice was soft but steady. "I'm exactly where I need to be, dear." What Jessica didn't know was that Eleanor had traveled 2,000 miles on a Greyhound bus, spending her last $200 to be here. She'd been planning this moment for 50 years. You see, Eleanor wasn't always a forgotten old woman, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. In 1974, she was Eleanor Montgomery, a rising star with a voice that could make angels weep. She just signed her first record deal with Mercury Records when life threw her a curveball that would change everything. Her younger brother Tommy was drafted to Vietnam. The night before he shipped out, he made Eleanor promise something that would haunt her for 5 decades. "Ellie," he said, tears in his 19-year-old eyes, "if something happens to me over there, promise me you'll take care of Mom and Dad. They're going to need you." Tommy never came home. Eleanor buried her dreams with her brother and spent the next 50 years caring for her aging parents, working 3 jobs, and watching her voice grow rusty from disuse. But on this February night, everything was about to change. The show's host, Michael Stevens, was known for his sharp wit and even sharper tongue. As Eleanor's name was called, he couldn't hide his smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next contestant is 72 years old and claims she's going to sing for us tonight." The audience chuckled. Someone yelled, "Where's the nursing home bus?" Eleanor walked onto that stage with the dignity of a queen. The judges, celebrity music producer David Cross, pop sensation Riley Jackson, and Broadway legend Patricia Williams, exchanged glances that said it all. This was going to be painful. David Cross leaned into his microphone. "Eleanor, honey, what are you going to sing for us tonight?" Eleanor's voice barely carried to the first row. "I'd like to sing The Rose by Bette Midler." The audience groaned. Riley Jackson actually put her head in her hands. Patricia Williams whispered to David, "This is cruel. Should we stop this?" But Eleanor had already nodded to the sound engineer. The familiar piano intro began to play, and she closed her eyes. What happened next will be burned into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. Eleanor opened her mouth, and the voice that emerged wasn't the shaky warble everyone expected. It was pure liquid gold, rich, powerful, and filled with 50 years of pain, sacrifice, and dreams deferred. Some say love, it is a river that drowns a tender reed. The laughter died instantly. The theater fell into absolute silence, except for Eleanor's voice soaring through the rafters. Her vocal cords, preserved by decades of humming lullabies to her parents and singing hymns at Tommy's grave, unleashed a sound so beautiful it seemed impossible. David Cross's mouth fell open. Riley Jackson's eyes filled with tears. Patricia Williams stood up from her chair. But it wasn't just the technical perfection of Eleanor's voice. It was a story she told through every note. You could hear the funeral she sang at when Tommy didn't come home. You could hear the bedside vigils during her parents' final years. You could hear 5 decades of dreams she thought were buried forever. The audience was mesmerized. Phones came out not to mock, but to capture this miracle. The camera operator zoomed in on faces in the crowd. Tough construction workers wiping their eyes, teenagers putting down their phones to really listen, elderly couples holding hands and remembering their own buried dreams. As Eleanor reached the climax of the song, something magical happened. Her trembling hand steadied. Her posture straightened. The scared old woman who had walked onto the stage was gone, replaced by the star she was always meant to be. And the soul afraid of dying, that never learns to live. By the time Eleanor reached the final note, there wasn't a dry eye in the theater. The silence that followed lasted for what felt like an eternity. Then Patricia Williams stood up and began to clap. David Cross joined her. Then Riley. Then the entire audience erupted in the longest standing ovation in the show's history. People weren't just clapping. They were sobbing, cheering, and many were on their feet shouting bravo. The ovation lasted 7 full minutes. 7 minutes of pure, unrestrained emotion. Michael Stevens, the host who had smirked at Eleanor's entrance, was crying as he approached her. Eleanor, in 15 years of hosting this show, I have never, ever seen anything like that. How do you feel right now? Eleanor, still catching her breath, smiled through her tears. I feel like I finally came home. David Cross wiped his eyes and leaned into his microphone. Eleanor, I owe you an apology. I looked at you and saw someone past their prime. But you just reminded all of us that dreams don't have expiration dates. That was the most moving performance I've ever witnessed. Riley Jackson was shaking her head in amazement. Eleanor, I'm 25 years old, and I've been singing professionally for 8 years. You just gave me a masterclass in what music really means. That wasn't just singing, that was pure emotion in vocal form. But it was Patricia Williams, the Broadway legend, who said what everyone was thinking. Eleanor, in my 40 years in this business, I've worked with the greatest voices of our time. What you just did transcends technique. You reminded us why we fell in love with music in the first place. That was art in its purest form. The judges' votes were unanimous. 3 resounding yes that launched Eleanor into finals. But the real magic happened after the cameras stopped rolling. The video of Eleanor's performance was uploaded to YouTube, and within 24 hours, it had 10 million views. Within a week, 50 million. The comments section was flooded with stories from people who had given up on their own dreams. A 45-year-old teacher from Texas wrote, I stopped writing poetry 20 years ago. Eleanor reminded me it's never too late to create beauty. A 60-year-old man from London posted, I put my guitar in a closet when I got married 30 years ago. Today I'm taking it out again. But the most powerful response came from an unexpected source. Tommy Patterson Jr., Eleanor's nephew she hadn't seen in 20 years, saw the video and reached out. Aunt Ellie, he wrote, Dad would be so proud. He always said you had the voice of an angel. It's time the world heard it. Eleanor didn't win the competition. She came in second place. But she won something far more valuable. She won her life back. The record labels came calling. At 72, Eleanor signed her first recording contract. Her debut album, Dreams Deferred, went platinum. She donated half the proceeds to a foundation supporting families of fallen soldiers, named in Tommy's memory. But here's the real kicker. Eleanor's story didn't just change her life. It started a movement. Talent shows across the world began featuring older contestants. Retirement homes started music programs. People in their 60s, 70s, and 80s began pursuing dreams they thought were dead and buried. Eleanor Patterson proved that the most powerful force in the universe isn't gravity or nuclear energy. It's a human being who refuses to let their dreams die. Today, Eleanor tours the world, sharing her voice and her story. She's 73 now, still wearing simple dresses and thick glasses, but when she walks onto a stage, she doesn't walk like a forgotten old woman anymore. She walks like what she always was, a star. Her message is simple but revolutionary. Your dreams don't die when you get older. They just wait. They wait for the moment when you're brave enough to dust them off and let them shine. So the next time you think you're too old, too late, or too forgotten to chase your dreams, remember Eleanor Patterson. Remember that the most beautiful roses often bloom in winter. Remember that it's never, ever too late to become who you were meant to be, because somewhere out there, your stage is waiting. Your moment is coming. And when it arrives, you'll be ready to remind the world that dreams don't have expiration dates. They just have perfect timing.